America's crime crisis getting out of hand in states like California, where dangerous repeat offenders are returned to the streets to cause even more harm. This morning, I spoke to a former Los Angeles prosecutor, Irene Lee, on the terrifying 2020 attack against her by the same man who was charged with assaulting nearly blinding Olympian Kim Glass. Turns out the suspect had assaulted at least 3 other women prior to attacking Lee and Glass. Here she is.
Unfortunately, right now, at this time, there's a climate of preferential treatment for violent offenders over that of law-abiding citizens. I believe that Kim's attack was entirely predictable and preventable. This shouldn't have happened to her. I had warned the judge who sentenced the man who attacked me when I spoke out last summer. And I had asked the judge, I said, how many more women does this defendant have to hurt for it to matter to this court?
And that comes amid another story of a repeat criminal, this one ending in tragedy. Former NASCAR driver Bobby East stabbed and killed at a gas station by a homeless man who was out on parole with a warrant for his arrest. A SWAT team later shot and killed that suspect, identified as 27-year-old Trent Millsap. Judge, every Monday, almost every day, we could do stories like this. And it was interesting after we interviewed Kim Glass on Friday, Irene, who had also been assaulted by the same person, reached out and said, this happened to me too. And she's a former prosecutor.
Yeah. All this social justice nonsense, and it is nonsense. The idea is that everyone should be treated equally. No, they shouldn't. There are some people who show you their hand ahead of time, and they victimize other human beings. It's totally unprovoked. It's random, and they get a charge out of it. And whatever the reason is, there are judges on the bench. There are now these new progressive prosecutors who think, oh, they just need a little understanding. We have to let them out. We can't incarcerate them. There are some people who don't deserve to breathe the same air that you and I breathe, and it's as simple as that. They're called career criminals. These people are people who hurt other people. That's why we have parole boards. That's why people like George Gascon should be out of a job right now in Los Angeles. These are people who believe that privilege should be given to the criminal and the victims don't matter. I have long said it shouldn't be called the criminal justice system. It should be called the victim's justice system, because but for the victim, there is no system. These criminals decide that they're gonna hurt any one of us for no reason, and like a thunderbolt, it will hit you, and your life will never be the same. They deserve to be behind bars. There's a reason we have this system, and there's a reason why Black Lives Matter, the organization, and all this nonsense America is as violent as it's been in 30 years, because they don't understand the street.
And Greg, what about a woman's right to stay alive?
Yeah, it's the irony of, like, where the hell are the feminist groups? Because the predominant number, I mean, it seems to me, in many of these crimes, most of them are women victims. And all of these perps have a thing in common. They're recidivists, right? Which means that their subsequent crime could have been prevented if law enforcement had kept them behind bars. I mean, these are guys, when you look at the dude that just killed the race car driver, you look at him and go, you wouldn't release that in the prison general population, much less the American general population. They are playing with people's lives. But if you shared these examples to woke prosecutors, they would simply accept it because they already accepted it. There were interviews, I believe it was with Gascon early on, that said that they were expecting a measure of recidivism because that's the price you pay with prison reform. It's just something you got to deal with. I'm sure, I can't remember who it was, so I don't want to say who it is, who basically said that we're willing to accept this risk. So I believe that they should experience the risk themselves. I don't know, like it's not enough to recall someone. There has to be consequences, for allowing people to become victims. They have deemed victims subservient to the victimizers, and they got to pay legally, or I don't know what you do, but you got to disincentivize these woke prosecutors somehow. I don't know how you do it, but...
What about, Jessica, do you have any ideas on that?
I'm not sure about what happens post being recalled, to your point, Greg. I don't know what that should be. I think that they're going to have hard times getting good jobs after they're out of this. I don't think they'll be able to go into some cushy, private.
Hiring at CNN.
I don't think Chesapeake is trying to go be a commentator, but I think that people who are on the other side of this, people in public office, like Gavin Newsom was interviewed by local Fox out in Los Angeles. He was asked about George Gascon, and he said that he, quote, didn't know enough about his job performance, but the criticism is disturbing to him. Well, the pictures speak for themselves of what's going on. You do know the number of people who left your state, right? A lot of high earners who are also gone elsewhere at this point. You can follow the story along with everybody, because this isn't something now that is only being covered by certain aspects of the media. Everyone is concerned about this because you also have high-profile people. You have a race car driver now who this happened to. You have a Goldman Sachs employee who was shot going to brunch on a Sunday. So we need better responses. I don't know in terms of punishments for this, but people like Irene Lee, there was a woman who used to work in the DA's office in San Francisco who quit to join the recall effort for London Breed. That's going to be happening. And these are smart, accomplished women, right, who are making this argument that, to your point, when does my life matter? And that's what we're all thinking walking around.
I hope Jessica doesn't get canceled for saying that.
Yeah, please.
What would you do if I got canceled?
Oh, I have a few plans. When a black mentally ill homeless man attacks a Asian woman and a black woman, the left thinks, wait a second, who's the real victim here? Because these two women, you have a successful female Asian attorney, you have a black female Olympic athlete, they've done well in this corrupt American racist capitalist system. But the mentally deranged black homeless drug addict is the victim of America's unjust system. So therefore, he's the one that needs special treatment. Because if you send him to prison, you're just re-victimizing him. And everybody knows when you put someone in prison, it creates more criminals. So he's going to need free housing, he's going to need free health care, and he's going to need free magic mushrooms so he can deal with all of his demons. That's how they see things. Now, you're right. They asked Newsom what's going on in L.A., and he basically said, I don't know. You'll have to ask the locals. L.A. is in California. Can you imagine if they asked DeSantis what was happening in Miami? He's like, ask people in Miami. I'm not really sure. Gavin Newsom, if he's going to run for office, he's going to get attacked for everything that happens in L.A. and San Francisco. He better have a better answer than I don't really know what's going on.
Do you think he didn't know, or he didn't want to get into the ideological argument?
I think he doesn't want to get into it. But he needs a better excuse.
That's what's so pitiful. It's of course he knows. And he's not brave enough to say what he thinks.
Opportunity. Be the tough on crime guy.
If
you want to run.
Does anybody want to take that mantle?
It's ideology.
A mental mantle? We're having a Monday. Mentally mantle. Monday, apparently.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.